Welcome to Dolphins Today by Chat Sports. I am Nic Rohloff, coming to you after the Dolphins have officially completed their preseason. Final game was in Tampa Bay last night, where they did catch an L, where they finished the preseason 2-1. But there are a lot of takeaways from these games because we have QB2 battle, we have some injury news, and we have the final roster cutdown day for the Miami Dolphins this upcoming Tuesday, where they would trim the roster from 90 to 53. We will start with the first takeaway. And the first and only takeaway from the third preseason game, as no one really as important as anyone who's going to have a role day one on this roster played, is that Skylar Thompson deserves to be QB2. And I don't really think this is even a debate anymore. We've talked about in depth about who should be QB2 between Mike White, Skylar Thompson. Mike White has a $3.5 million cap hit, where if they cut him, they would save that money. Skylar Thompson is relatively cheap, so that also factors into play here. But when you talk about the money, that doesn't even really start to begin to creep into the conversation until later on, because Skylar Thompson has just simply outplayed him. And if Skylar Thompson was more expensive, then okay, maybe Mike White should be the quarterback kept. But the fact that Skylar Thompson is cheaper, the fact that he's outplayed Mike White, I don't think there is a world that we can actually sit here and justify Mike White being the QB2 over Skylar Thompson. In the 2024 preseason, Thompson was 35 of 61. Still not great, but it's better than Mike White's 20 for 43. Skylar threw for 346 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 INTs. Now, the 2 interceptions from Skylar Thompson are admittedly pretty bad. When you rewatch the film there, it's kind of like whoa, Skylar, what are you seeing there? Both of them were thrown over the middle of the field and just were absolutely jumped and picked off. One was taken to the house almost, and one was set up the Falcons right at the 15-yard line in that first preseason game. But the eyes don't lie, and I hate to bring that into play here, but when you just watch these two quarterbacks play, it is very evident which one has more command of the offense, which one has more rapport with its wide receivers. Skylar Thompson's out there throwing dots, and Mike White's out here kind of just sitting in the pocket, trying to find something and not really connecting with his wide receivers. And to me, that's an underrated part of Skylar Thompson winning this QB battle as well, is that it's just clear to me that he's more fluid and mobile inside the pocket, which I think is very important. Mike White sits back there like a statue and tries to be a Kirk Cousins type quarterback, breaking you down from the pocket when he just simply doesn't have the tools to be able to do that in the first place. Skylar is able to jump around a little bit, not afraid to use his legs. There's a couple plays that stood out to me yesterday where Skylar, one, was getting pressure up the middle, made a miss with a little slide step to the right, stepped up in the pocket, and checked it down to a tight end for 5 yards. And you might say, check down the tight end for 5 yards? That impressed you? Well, it absolutely did, because he turned what could have been a 6-7 yard loss into a 5-yard game. That's about a 12-yard difference if your math is mathin'. Mike White is not mobile enough and doesn't have the agility to make plays like that. So if Mike White was sitting in that exact situation, he's probably getting sacked, which is why I think having Skylar is more important. And there was another play that really stood out where he did a little fake halfback toss to Xander Horvath, rolled out to his right, and then delivered about a 25-30-yard dot onto the sideline to Mike Harley Jr., who actually had a pretty good preseason game himself. There's no chance of him making the roster, but he did play pretty well, maybe kind of showcasing his talents for a different team in the preseason finale. But I thought Skylar Thompson clearly outplayed Mike White. I don't think it was close, and to me, I just think that there really isn't a debate, and we'll see what ultimately happens. I think there is a chance that the Dolphins keep all 3 quarterbacks. I think there's a chance they only keep one. But if they only keep one quarterback, I think it is Skylar Thompson, and it should be only Skylar Thompson. Do you agree with me? Should the Dolphins keep Skylar Thompson or Mike White? If you believe it should be Skylar Thompson, type those STs. If you think it should be Mike White, type those MWs. All right, as we transition here, I think I want to give a couple more shout-outs to players that performed really well last night. The first being Malik Washington, the wide receiver from Virginia, who was drafted in the 6th round by the Miami Dolphins. I thought he was sensational. Did not really do anything in the passing game. Only had 1 catch for 7 yards, but had an end around where the Dolphins ran a fancy little fake handoff, pitch back to Malik Washington, who was coming around behind Mike White at quarterback, and Malik took it 40 yards, literally flipped the field from the 10-yard line all the way out to the 40. Malik Washington is absolutely special with the ball in his hands. There is no debate to me that he's on this roster. I know some beat reporters out there were kind of hypothesizing if he could be cut. I never thought there was a chance. You guys know this if you've been around the channel. I've been really high on the young man from Virginia. He does have to refine his route running because he kind of fails to get open and straight up wide receiver ran routes. But when they run gimmick plays to get him the ball in space, he is as dynamic as it comes. Also had a really good kick return out to the 40-yard line, a punt return out to the midfield after a 28-yard return. He gets the ball in his hands in space, he will make things happen. Malik Washington, I'm fascinated to see how Mike McDaniel scripts plays for him during the regular season because I think he's just too talented of a guy to just let sit on the bench. Another shout out, Jalen Wright, rookie from Tennessee, 4th round back. He's just certified himself as this 3rd RB. I don't know if Jeff Wilson gets cut. I think there's a chance he does. I've kind of projected that for a couple months now. But to me, there's no debate about Jalen Wright being your 3rd running back. He's good with the ball in his hands. He's good in pass protection. He's good in the passing game, just receiving the football. I think Jalen Wright is someone who is going to be really good. And I really like this rookie class from Miami. I think in 2 to 3 years, we're going to look back at this between Chop, Malik, Mohammed, Jalen, and Patrick Paul and say, man, Chris Grier really hit this 2024 NFL draft out of the park. Give a nice little shout out to Hayden Rucci as well, the UDFA from Wisconsin tight end. Had about 40 yards, had a touchdown, did have a bad drop that almost led to a Skylar Thompson interception to open up the second half, but I thought he was ultimately pretty good for the most part. And then also a quick shout out to Channing Tindall. Listen, I don't know if he makes this team, but Channing Tindall played his ass off yesterday. 12 tackles. He's had a really good preseason, totaling over 20 tackles in the 3 games, 1.5 sacks. He's doing everything he possibly could to potentially make this roster. Just not sure if it's going to be enough with Duke Riley kind of certifying himself as LB4 behind Anthony Walker Jr., Jordan Brooks, and David Long Jr. Some injury news post-game on Aaron Brewer and Odell Beckham Jr. coming up in just a bit, but we are sponsored by Game Time, the best way to get your tickets. Game Time is the only way that I purchase my tickets, whether I'm going to a sporting event, whether I'm going to a comedy show, theater, concert, does not matter. If I'm going out to an event, I'm using Game Time. And I'm not just saying this to you guys. I really do. Listen, Noah Khan came here to Dallas, Texas a month ago where we're located. How did I get my tickets? Game Time. It's the only place to do it. They have all-in pricing, which allows you to see how much your ticket is when you're looking at it rather than being blindsided at checkout. I love that feature. But the other feature that I really love is the panoramic view. You get to see your exact vantage point from your seat when you're viewing the ticket. It's the only way I buy my tickets because I don't want to be someone who goes to the arena or something like that and then just like, well, this view sucks. Well, you're going to know what you're getting with Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Remember, first purchase only, but create an account, redeem code CHATSPORTS, CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase. What is it? It's game time. Let's get into some injury news now from the Miami Dolphins, specifically on a couple of starters, as Mike McDaniel was asked about some injury news post the game. And we'll start with Odell Beckham Jr., who is still on the PUP list for the Miami Dolphins. And Mike McDaniel said he is hopeful that OBJ will practice before the season. Well, I'm hopeful he practices before the season too, because I've kind of switched my tune on OBJ, and it's pretty clear to me that he's going to miss week 1 against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But hopefully he's going to be able to return relatively soon, either against the Buffalo Bills in week 2 on Thursday Night Football or in week 3 when the Dolphins travel out west to play the Seattle Seahawks. Specifically, Mike McDaniel had this quote that he shared: "You hope, but you do have to listen to people's bodies. OBJ is optimistic about how it's developing." Well, hopefully OBJ heals up pretty soon and is able to hit the football field, because I've openly stated that the Dolphins have the best wide receiver core in the NFL when OBJ is on the field. Obviously, we have not seen them 3 play together, them being Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and OBJ. But those 3 I just think are the best. And when you really have those type of weapons, you're going to be able to flourish this season in the passing game with the point guard that Tua Tagovailoa is. I compare him to a Chris Paul, Steve Nash, Jason Kidd. If you're going to the NBA world because he's not going to do anything flashy. He's going to get the ball out of his hands. He's going to hit his playmakers in stride with accurate pinpoint passes and let them cook, which is what Chris Grier and Mike McDaniel have in mind for this Dolphins offense. And I can't wait to see those three on the field. I'm just hoping that it comes sooner rather than later. But I am a little pessimistic now with OBJ continuing to be on the PUP list and them hoping he practices this week, not guaranteeing it as we do get closer and closer to week 1, about 2 weeks away, fellas. All right, another starter that we have to talk about, Aaron Brewer, the starting center. McDaniel said he feels pretty good about Aaron Brewer, but it's not concrete regarding his availability for week 1. We've seen Nic Rohloff be the starting center in practice with Aaron Brewer out. I think this is pretty set in stone, by the way, that Nic Rohloff is going to be starting on this interior offensive line on week 1 against the Jacksonville Jaguars without question. To me, I think it seems like this is the starting O-line. I'll give you 2 scenarios. If Aaron Brewer is back and he's starting week 1, your starting offensive line is going to go Teron Armstead left tackle, Robert Jones left guard, Aaron Brewer center, Nic Rohloff right guard, Austin Jackson right tackle. But on the off chance that Aaron Brewer is not ready, I think they're going to go with Teron Armstead left tackle, Robert Jones left guard, Nic Rohloff at center, probably Lester Cotton at right guard, and then right tackle being Teron Armstead. I don't think Jack Driscoll's had a good training camp whatsoever. It's been disappointing, and I think Lester Cotton is going to be on this roster and Jack Driscoll potentially on the outs. All right, a couple more injuries to note here. Jevon Holland is day-to-day for the Dolphins. That's what Mike McDaniel said. I don't think his week 1 status is up in the air at all. I think they're just kind of playing a little bit safe, just like with Jalen Waddle, Jalen Ramsey, and the rest of the other players that are key to this roster, just making sure he's going to be healthy for the regular season. No need to push him right now. A couple of young guys. Erik Ezukanma was seen in a boot at the preseason game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We knew he left the game or practice with Tampa on Wednesday with a little bit of a limp, but people kind of made it seem like he was fine. Erik even tweeted out on X/Twitter that he was fine, but was in a boot labeled week to week. We'll see if he's able to go for week 1 against the Jags. This wide receiver room is just absolutely beaten up. I don't know what the Dolphins did to have all these wide receivers injured, but let's just pray that Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle stay healthy because, well, it's going to be tough. And I think we're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets, a lot of 2 running back sets in week 1 because they just simply don't have a reliable third wide receiver outside of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle right now with all these injuries. So we'll see if Erik is able to be ready for week 1, assuming he makes this team. Another guy that we have an unfortunate injury for, Patrick McMorris, the 6th-round pick from Cal in this past draft. He is also week to week with an injury that he sustained in practice this past week, and that's a bummer because McMorris was really fighting his way to be on this 53-man roster, and I do think it's pretty clear that he's not going to be on it right now. I think he ultimately ends up getting cut, and the Dolphins try to keep McMorris on the practice squad. Even though he was picked in the 6th round, there was never a guarantee he was on this team, and I'm curious to see which safeties ultimately get capped. Obviously, you're going to have Jordan Poyer. You're going to have Jevon Holland. Marcus May certified himself as this 3rd safety. But it'll be interesting to see if it's going to be McMorris on the 53-man or Elijah Campbell. Probably lean Elijah Campbell, but Mark Perry, the UDFA out of TCU, also played pretty well in the last couple preseason games. I ultimately think it's going to be Elijah Campbell with McMorris on the practice squad as long as the team doesn't scoop him up and add him to their 53-man roster. But either way, that's kind of how I think things are going right now. That's going to do it for today's show. I know a little bit of a long one here, but we had a lot to break down and take away from the final preseason game for the Miami Dolphins. We'll have another show tomorrow, so make sure you stay in there. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And Tuesday, big day as well, where we're going to see the Dolphins roster get trimmed down from 90 to 53. So subscribe and stay tuned. I'll see you tomorrow in another video. Go Fins.